Hello and welcome back. Sean here, Mountains Garage. It's a quiet morning. I'm just gonna go over a couple things. First one, the rear brakes on the Race 55 Chevy. I have to come up with a better name because I don't name vehicles, but I'm getting tired of saying Race 55 Chevy. Could say Bel Air. I don't know, we'll figure that out. But anyway, I had a problem with the alignment of my rear calipers, and coming to find out, I broke my own rule. And my rule, I learned many years ago, but it came in really handy when I spent the last 4 years of my career as a parts man and not at your local parts store for a large municipality with thousands of pieces of equipment. And unlike your local parts store, when somebody comes to the window and they want some obscure part, you can't say, no, we don't carry that. You have to find it. You have to learn about it. So I found the biggest tool was to get information. And the biggest mistake I made on this strange early floater rear end setup was not getting the installation instructions that would have been provided 30 years ago. I talked to them yesterday. Finally, I kept calling. I don't know if they had phone system problems, but finally, about 15 minutes before they closed, I got a live voice and was put through to the guy that I originally dealt with that sold me the parts. And he said, let me send you the instructions by email while we're talking on the phone, and maybe you can tell me what's missing. So it was pretty clear that there is and if you read the instructions, there was two options back then and still. You can have steel brakes, which I have, a steel rotor and traditional pads, or you can have carbon fiber. Well, I don't have carbon fiber, but the instructions say, and the picture shows, that with steel brakes, there's a shim that goes between this and the housing. So not only did I not get the bolts, I didn't get the shims. So now they're on their way. And believe it or not, the shims, I was trying to meet the $25 minimum. I said, give me the shims, the bolts, replacement O-rings for the drive flange and the little cap. And I would have bought more. That's what I bought, and it still barely made $25. So, I mean, the prices are reasonable. And I wanted to buy more. I wanted to buy spare lock rings for the spindle nut, and he said they're not available. They told me the other day there was still the same one, so I don't need them today. I was just wanting to buy up, stock that's depleting. And it turns out they sell the spindle nut socket, but they don't have it anymore. So the one I got from the pot store yesterday is not big enough, so it's close. So I'm probably gonna make one. I see on a lot of the chassis shops, like Rick Jones, Quartermax, they sell a double-sided one. It's just a round piece of aluminum with pins and a square cut in the middle, so I'll just make one. No big deal. So that is the update on the brakes in the 55, and one, hopefully a subscriber, commented that, why don't you just put a shim behind this? I'm like, you win, because that is the answer. Next up, this FTI Turbo 400, and I can't tell you what model and level. There is a decal on it that I'll clean off when I actually take it apart, and we'll discuss. I'll look up on their website and what's supposed to be inside, and I guarantee they're a good company. Whatever the customer orders, that's what they got, which is the important part. If you want a transmission for a certain level, you gotta, hopefully from, watching the channel or doing lots of research, you can choose the options that you need and buy enough transmission the first time. In this case, we're gonna do some upgrades to it. First is the elusive, and I talked about this in the last video. I talked about bell housings, SFI bell housings. This is the JW LS specific housing. Going by the tag, it was bought a year ago, January, a year ago last month. That's when the date was. And typically they're dated a few months ahead, so it was probably bought at the end of 2021. It has the upper bolt hole not cut off, and you can see that it doesn't have the Bugles, Pontiac, Cadillac, bunny ears, which is a good thing because it just says, you know, LS Turbo 400 or TH350. They take the same bell housing, believe it or not. Same pattern. It's a pretty heavy piece for sure, but I do wish, if anybody that works at JW is watching, which they're probably not, but you could be like everybody else and just make one housing that fits everything. So, whatever. So, it's going to get this housing, and this one's actually cut right here for some reason, so that was the reason that's going to continue to crack. And it does not have a trans brake, so he went back to FTI and bought their Sportsman transmission brake, so that'll be interesting. I haven't put one of those in, I don't think. I've covered just about every make and model trans brake probably, but we'll take a look at it. So yeah, it looks like a nice unit, and gonna upgrade a few things, see if it has a billet forward hub. If not, we're gonna put one of those in and just see what's inside. So that'll be interesting. And a lot of people ask online anyway, how big a torque converter you can put in this. I'm just looking through the window of the instructions, and it says that it will accommodate 11-inch or smaller General Motors style torque converter with a 10 or 11-inch bolt pattern. So there you go. A lot of people wonder if they can put a really big converter in it. 11-inch is what you get. And I'll probably install this one with the included O-rings and all the hardware that comes with it. Normally I go off the reservation and use the ATI gasket and everything, but maybe I'll install it as intended. But again, if anybody from JW is watching, stop sending regular bolts and washers. Flange bolt, much less likely to leak. If they included a flange bolt, you could use a stock pump bolt washer. You wouldn't need to use silicone. It'd just like putting on a stock pump, other than you squeezing this in between. So when you have a bolt and a washer, oil can get out in between. So, bad idea. Another interesting project, if you looked at the transmission hanging on the stand, on the thumbnail, that is the elusive 13.5-inch tailhousing Turbo 400 Cadillac. I believe it's a 68. And my job is to rebuild it, just a warmed over street transmission, kind of like the one we did last week. But I'm gonna put a Chevy case on it because it's got an LS swap. So, but put the long tail housing back on it. So that's gonna be a strange transmission, but it fits the car. It's going back in the 68 Cadillac, so that transmission is almost as clean. I can't wait to see inside it, and I'll do a video of it. That 68 Impala transmission where the pump was still perfectly clean and not rusted. So this transmission, coincidentally in 1968, has a very similar clean pump. Maybe that particular year they used really good iron when they cast the pumps, but I don't know. You can still read the ink markings on it. The outside of the case, the car set in a wet environment, dirt floor or something. So the outside of the case is kind of, you know, got this white stuff growing out of it, but it'll clean right off, and I'm sure it'll be a fine unit. So that should be interesting. I've mentioned many times how the Cadillac transmissions shift really soft, so maybe we'll go in and find out why. So that'll be interesting. 3 or 4 years ago now, I spent most of the winter doing odd jobs around the shop. I didn't feel like doing much, so I decided to motorize my bead roller. And at the same time, my brother was doing one, which was kind of cool. And then I actually bought one of the cheapest. It was a Jegs bead roller, and did all the modifications that you can see to make it sturdy, because in stock form they're 1/2-inch plate and they tend to flex. So I built that one completely and bought every die they could possibly get for it, and I ended up selling that one. And I've hung on to my, I think it's an old Mittler Brothers, or I have to look at the name on it, but it's an old stock car type bead roller. The difference between the expensive bead rollers and the 1/2-inch plate bead rollers, and you have to watch when you're shopping, is the less expensive bead rollers have a 22 millimeter or 7/8 ID shaft for the die to fit on. And all your expensive bead rollers, you know, like the Jamie Johnson, Mittler Brothers ones, those are 3/4 shaft. Now my bead roller I currently have is a 3/4 shaft, and I actually was going to sell that, and the smaller 22 millimeter 7/8 dies, well, the bigger ID, but the die itself is actually slightly smaller, are way less expensive. The 3/4 ID dies are about $100 a set, and for $100 you can buy a set of 6 different ones. If you shop around, they're all over the place. So your money goes a lot further with the cheaper stuff. So I don't know which direction I'm going to go, because I believe I have my bead roller sold, and so I'm going to motorize another one. I don't know which direction I'm going to go. I don't know what bead roller I'm going to buy. I don't know if I'm going to do another lesser one or buy a good one. I don't know. So I'm still thinking about that. So it's fun to think about. I haven't actually sold mine yet. There's no reason to sell mine other than my buddy was shopping, and I just decided, hey, you want to buy mine? And I think to myself, I'll buy or build another one. It's a fun project, and I don't have enough projects going on, so why not? All right, enjoy your day. I got to get busy and do something. Take care.